Welcome to Learner's Planet students. This is session 1 about components of food, in which we are going to learn about nutrients, its process, that is nutrition, and some major components of food which are very much essential for our body, like carbohydrates and fats. So in this session we are going to discuss about two major components of food, and that are carbohydrates and fats. Right, so let's start with this session with the introduction of the components of food. As you know, students, that food is any substance which is consumed to provide nutritional support to our body. Means it will provide us with all the vital nutrients present in all the components of food, which will provide us with energy to carry out various activities. Right. So we can say that food is essential for the proper growth of our body and the development of our body, as it contains all the vital nutrients which are present in all the components of food that we consume. Right. So we will see that what components of food are very much important for us. Right. Not all the components of food are healthy, but some are unhealthy. So we have to just see, it should be our conscience. It depends upon our conscience that what should we include in our diet. So in short, we can say that food is a complex mixture of various substances which provides us with sufficient energy, and it also provides us with heat for carrying out various activities in our day-to-day life. It is also very important for growth of body and maintenance of our body tissues, and it also adds bulk to the diet to keep our digestive system in a very proper condition. Alright, so we saw the introduction about food. Now let's look at the definition of nutrients. Yes, students, so what are nutrients? Yes, the substances that are needed by our body for proper growth and health are called nutrients. As you know, students, that health is defined as the state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and in short we can say the absence of disease. Right? So for maintaining health and for proper growth, we need to have such substances which are very much essential for us, and they are termed as nutrients. So to acquire a proper health, one must include a daily routine of consuming a balanced diet. That means a diet should include each and every kind of component of food, each and every type of food group, but in a moderate amount. Right? So let's see that what is this process of consuming nutrients are called as. Yes. So the components of food mainly includes the process of nutrition. So students, first we should get familiar with the term nutrition. What is actually nutrition, students? It is a science of foods that deals with the dynamic process in which the food consumed by us, by human beings or any other living being, is digested, then they are absorbed, then the nutrients are distributed to body tissues, means different various organs of our body, for utilization. Why utilization? Because our body tissues will utilize these nutrients after getting absorbed, and then they will be required for the energy. Right? Means it will give us energy. Right? And because of that energy, we will be able to carry out various activities. And finally, the wastes are disposed off the body. Right? So this nutrition process is a dynamic process in which the nutrients are first, the food is consumed, then digested, the nutrients are absorbed from the digested food, then they are distributed, and finally the wastes are disposed of. And rest of the nutrients which are required by our body are consumed, and they are used in the form of energy. Right? So we can say that the food that we eat daily consists of different nutrients or components, right? So let's have a look at some of the components of food which are very much essential. As you know, students, that almost all the foods are of plant or animal origin. So we will see some major food groups that will form the components of food of both kinds, of both origin, that is plant as well as animal origin, right? So there are 6 main components present in food that fulfills the basic requirements of our body, as we discussed, for sufficient energy, for providing sufficient energy, for carrying out various activities, for growth, and also it adds as a bulk for keeping our digestive system in a very good condition. So the main 6 components present in food are carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, vitamins, and lastly the fibers, right? So in this session we will study about the 2 major food groups, that are carbohydrates and fats. So let's start with the first major food group, known as carbohydrates. So the first major group are the carbohydrates. Students, carbohydrates are made up of hydrocarbon molecules. That means it consists of hydrogen and carbon component, right? Hydrogen and carbon molecules, and that will combine to form carbohydrates. That is why this term is carbohydrates, right? So carbohydrates are the foods that give us with lots of energy, and they also are a necessary part of a healthy diet for both children, adults, as well as all the age, for all the age people, right? For all age, right? So most of the foods that have a lot of carbohydrates in them are mainly fruits, oatmeal, bread, honey, rice, corn, millet, barley, noodles, etc. So there are many other foods also that have a lot of carbohydrates, right? So we can say that carbohydrates are one of the most important energy sources for the physical activities, as it provides us with a lot of energy, right? So we can say that carbohydrates are also present in the alcohols like wine and beer, and most foods contain carbohydrates which breaks down into simple sugars. That means simple sugars are the major source of energy for our body, and this is the main reason which gives us with lot of energy. Carbohydrates provide us with lot of energy. So mainly based on the source of energy, they are classified into major 2 types. Let's see the types of carbohydrates. Yes, the 2 types of carbohydrates are simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. So first of all we will study about, yes, simple carbohydrates. So students, what are actually simple carbohydrates? They are called as simple sugars. Simple sugars means the source of energy for our body, right? Sugars are the source of energy from our body, and they are obtained from the carbohydrates, means they are the simplest form of carbohydrates, right? And simple sugars are mainly found in the refined sugars, right? So the refined sugars means the fruits, for example fruits, they are the natural sources of sugar. Then honey, it also contains natural type of sugar. Milk also contains a type of sugar called lactose, as we discussed many a times. That milk contains a natural sweetener which provides sweetness to the milk, that is a lactose. And also the table sugar contains sucrose as the natural sweetener, which is added to tea and coffee as a sweetening agent, right? So these are some of the examples of the simple carbohydrates. As you know, students, simple sugars are found in refined sugars like white sugar that we find in a sugar bowl, and if we have a lollipop, we are eating simple carbohydrates, means the simple sugars. But we can also find simple sugars in more nutritious food, like we saw that fruits and milk also. It's better to get our simple sugars from food like fruit and milk rather than lollipop and chocolates, right? Because sugar is not added to these foods, and they also contain vitamins, fiber and important nutrients like calcium. And as you know that calcium is also very much important for our bones and also for the teeth formation, right? So students, as we discussed that a lollipop also contains simple carbohydrate, but a lollipop has lots of added sugar. It does not contain important nutrients because it is added in it. So we cannot say that lollipop is a very good thing to eat. No, it is not a good thing to eat, right? We have to consume such food in which natural sugars are present with the other important nutrients, right? So we can say that simple carbohydrates convert to energy very rapidly. This is why we say that carbohydrates are the instant source of energy, because simple carbohydrates convert to energy very rapidly and they provide quick but short lasting bursts of energy, right? So it will provide us with energy with a very short duration but very quickly. So this is one of the main important reasons that why the carbohydrates should be included in our diet, right? So simple carbohydrates, as we discussed, includes sugars, ripened fruits, etc. Because of the sweet tooth that many children have, it is very important to have the right balance between the simple and also the complex carbohydrates in children's diet. So this is very important to know, and this is very important point to remember, that some children have sweet tooth, and so there should be a right balance between simple and complex carbohydrate in children's diet, right? So we saw we discussed about simple carbohydrates. Now let's discuss about complex carbohydrates. Yes. So what are actually complex carbohydrates? They are called as starches. Yes. Complex carbohydrates are called as starches, whereas simple carbohydrates are termed as sugars, right? So we saw two major categories, the sugars and the starches. They are the form of carbohydrates, right? So there are some of the grain products such as bread, crackers, pasta and rice that contains starch, right? So we can say that starch is also a very important component of carbohydrate. Yes, it is a very important component of carbohydrates. Like rice is rich in starch, then wheat and bread is rich in starch. Corn or maize is also a starch-rich cereal. It is used to make popcorn and cornflakes, right? So it is also a very important component of carbohydrate which should be consumed by us, right? So as with simple sugars, some complex carbohydrate foods are better choices than others. Like refined grains such as white flour and white rice have been processed, which removes nutrients and fiber. So this is a note which you should take care, which you should keep in mind, that processing of refined grains such as white flour and white rice removes the nutrients and fiber from the diet. So that is not very important for us. When refined grains are processed, after that they are devoiding the essential nutrients which are very much good for our body, which are healthy for our body. So when they are devoid of the nutrients, they do not remain so much important for us, right? So we should always eat or consume the refined grains, but they should be unprocessed, right? Or we should also consume unrefined grains which still contain vitamins and minerals. So we should consume this, or we can consume it, right? So students, we can consume unrefined grains as they are rich in fiber, which helps in digestion, right? It helps our digestive system to work in a very well condition, right? So we should include unrefined grains in our diet. And also you know that fiber helps us to feel full. So we are less likely to overeat such foods. So we will not overeat such foods, and that will be very helpful for our body. And this can be explained by one such example, that fiber helps us to feel full. Why? Because let's take an example that a bowl of oatmeal fills us full or fills us up better than sugary candy with the same amount of calories as the oatmeal. And that is why most of the doctors recommend to have oatmeals in the diet rather than having sugary candy, right? Because oatmeals can provide us with bulk of calories, and they are also very much nutritious for us as they contain essential nutrients and the natural type of starch, right? So which type of carbohydrates should we eat? Both can be part of a healthy diet. Means simple carbohydrates are also good, and even complex carbohydrates are also very good for us. So do you know, students, that complex carbohydrates cannot convert energy as quickly as simple carbohydrates, because complex carbohydrates increases the blood glucose level very slowly, and it provides a longer lasting form of energy. And that is why you can feel that whenever you eat complex carbohydrates like food, like bread or crackers or pasta and rice, so for a long time you will not feel hunger, right? Because it is not broken down so quickly and so easily as simple carbohydrates does, right? So in short, we can say that simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates both are good for us. And some of the good examples of complex carbohydrates are pasta, rice, beans, carrots, cereal, potatoes, bread, corn, and even broccoli like vegetable, green vegetable. Okay, so we can include all such components in our diet. So students, we discussed about the simple carbohydrates and the complex carbohydrates, which are sugars and starches respectively. Now let's see that how our body uses such carbohydrates when we consume it. Yes. So how our body uses carbohydrates, it can be explained by this slide, that carbohydrates consumed by us are broken down into simple sugars, right, which we saw. Simple sugars, one type of carbohydrate, in our digestive system. So in and all, we can say that carbohydrates play a very important role in our digestive system, right? And in our digestive system, it is passed into the bloodstream, right? So simple sugars, when consumed by us, will be passed on into the bloodstream. And how it will work then after passing on into the bloodstream? Yes, as the sugar level rises in our blood, it will move to the cells, different cells of our body, where it can be stored as a source of energy. So whenever we will require energy for carrying out any activity, this storage form of energy will be utilized by our body, right? So always remember, as the sugar level will rise in the blood, it will move on to the cells, and there it will act as a storage form. It will act in as a storage form. And whenever it is in the stored form, that means you can use it as a source of energy any time, right? So the carbohydrates in some foods which we saw cause the blood sugar level to rise more quickly than others, right? That when this process goes fast with simple sugars, we are more likely to feel hungry again soon, because what will happen? Simple sugars are the simplest form of carbohydrates, right? And it provides us with instant source of energy, because it converts into energy rapidly, as we discussed. So it will convert into energy, and the energy will be utilized. And that is why we are able to feel, or we are more likely to feel hungry again. But this is not the case this is not true with the complex carbohydrates, because it will store in our body, and whenever required it will act as a source of energy for us, because it is giving a long lasting source of energy to us. So we will not feel hungry again soon, right? So when it occurs more slowly, as with a whole grain food, which is a complex carbohydrate, we will be satisfied for a longer time. So these type of complex carbohydrates give us energy as compared to simple sugars for a longer period of time. And so we can say the carbohydrates in some foods that contains simple sugars causes the blood sugar level to rise more quickly, right, than others. So this can lead to health problems like diabetes and other heart diseases. So it is not good for us. So it's good to consume complex carbohydrates rather than the simple ones like candy, right? So you can consume complex carbohydrates like green leafy vegetables and oatmeals, whole grain, wheat bread, etc., rather than consuming candy, right? So we saw many things about carbohydrates. We learned about carbohydrates, right? Yes, you will also be amazed to know that foods that are rich or high in added sugar like pastries, cookies, cake, candy, desserts, fruit juices tend to also be high in calories, right, and low in other valuable nutrients. So we should consume it in a very, very, very less amount, right? As a result of consuming pastries, cookies, cake and all such things in a high amount, a high sugar diet is often linked to obesity. As you know that excess of carbohydrates afterwards then converts into fats, and it will lead to a fatty disorder called as obesity. So it's better that not to consume the foods that are rich in added sugar, rather than we should consume the foods that are rich in natural sugar already present in the food with other important or essential nutrients. So students, always remember that eating too many sugary foods, that means the added sugar foods, can also lead to tooth decay. So it is not good for our teeth also. But a little sugar is very much important for us to consume, because it is in the food which provides us with other important nutrients, right? So now let's study about another major component of food which we should include in our diet, and that are fats. Yes, so fat is actually a component in food, major component in food, and there are some foods which include fruits and vegetables that have almost no fat, but other foods have plenty of fat like nuts, oil, butter and meat like beef and other kinds of meat. So children especially need certain amount of fat in their diet so that their brain and nervous system develops correctly, right? So for this thing, children have to be we have to take care of the children, right? We have to take care of their diet, because it is very much essential for their brain and their nervous system, right? So students, the name fat may make it sound like something we should not eat, but fat is an important part of a healthy diet, right? It also forms a major component in food, right? So you should consume it, but in a very moderate amount, right? So children need certain amount of fat in their diet, right? And that is why it is said that toddlers need to drink whole milk which has more fat, and other kids can drink low fat or skimmed milk also, right? So many people are there which that still believe that having fats in their diet is an unhealthy choice. But in reality, students, fats are an important part of a healthy diet, because they help our body to protect our internal organs. It produces energy. It also keeps our skin and hair in a very healthy condition, right? But people think that fats consumption leads to heart problems and other disorders. But this is not so true, right? So we need to know that there are different types of fats and we should consume it in a very moderate amount. So let's see some of the types of fats. Yes, so there are two major types of fats, like saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Students, you might see ads for foods, right, that say that they are low fat and these are fat-free foods. You should consume these kind of foods because these are low in fat, right? So what are these actually? What are low fat and fat-free foods? Yes, lower fat diets have been recommended for health by doctors, experts, and to help people lose weight, right? But nutrition experts are finding that fats are more complex and that some kinds of food are actually good for our health. So always remember that fat is good for health, but excess of fat is not good for health, right? So fat in food helps people to feel satisfied so that they don't eat as much as other foods. And students, fat, including fat in the food, that doesn't mean a high fat diet, right? Because a high fat diet will be not good for us, right? And some fats are there which are better than other fats. So let's have a look at saturated fats. Yes. What are saturated fats, students? These fats are found mainly in meat and other animal products like butter, cheese, and all the types of milk, but except skimmed milk, right? So students, the thing is, saturated fats are normally solid at room temperature. So we can identify, we can determine that what are saturated fats. They are the fats which are normally solid at room temperature. And students, you will be also amazed to know that saturated fats are also present in palm and coconut oils, which are often used in commercial baked foods. That is, it is the kind of fat that we see at the store, right? But eating too much of saturated fats can increase the risk of heart disease, right? So always remember that saturated fats should not be consumed in our diet, and if consumed, it should be in a very, very, very less amount, right? So we saw something about saturated fats. Now let's see some information about unsaturated fats. Yes, these are the fats that are found in plant foods, and the best of unsaturated foods are found in olive oil, peanut oil, canola oil, albaros oil, tuna, and salmon, right? Means these fats are found in plant foods as well as in fishes, right? But the main difference between the saturated and unsaturated fats is that saturated are solid at room temperature, but unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. For example, vegetable oil. And saturated fats are solid at room temperature, example, butter, right? So these should be kept in mind, that unsaturated fats can be consumed by us. It is good to consume unsaturated as compared to rather than consuming saturated fats, right? Students, there is some important information for you, that how can we calculate that how much fat should we consume? Like experts say that kids that are old, which are older than 2 years, should get about 30% of their daily calories from fat. So here is how it works. Listen very carefully. Like every day we eat a certain amount of calories. Like for example, some kids will eat 2000 calories in a day, some will eat 2200, or some will eat 1500 calories in a day. So if 30% of 2000 calories comes from fat, that means that 600 calories will come from fat. So in this way we can calculate that how much fat we are consuming, right? So now let's see that why do we include fats in our diet, right? So there are some important other points to remember, and also we will now discuss about that why fats are important. That means importance of fats and some points which we should keep in our mind. So students, though fats are very essential for our body, as we discussed, but eating too much of fat can be very harmful for us, right? Like excess of body fat leads to a condition called obesity, and even excess of carbohydrates, which will lead to fatty disorder called as obesity only. So obesity is very much harmful for our body. It is very harmful, so we should include fats in our diet, but in a very moderate amount, as if it will lead to a condition called obesity, then obesity may also lead to heart diseases and other harmful diseases like cancer, right? So in order to remain fit, it is better to limit fat containing foods like burgers, pizzas, samosa, kachori, etc. and many other foods, right? So students, there is also importance of consuming fats, like dietary fat helps a kid's body to grow and develop like it should be. Then fats also fuel our body and it helps to absorb some vitamins, and they are also the building blocks of cells of nervous tissue in our body. So remember that fat is not the enemy, but we will have to choose the right amount and the right kind of fat, right? If we are getting most of our fat from meat, fish and heart healthy oils, we have already made fat our friend, right? So always remember that we should not include junk foods in our diet, because junk foods are considered harmful due to their high fat content and sugar content and also poor nutritional value. So we should consume such type of fats which are essential and which are good for our body, right? So we should include such foods which are containing good type of fats, not the harmful ones like burgers, pizza, samosa, kachori and candy, soft drinks, etc. Right? So students, we discussed about two major components of food, two major food groups and their importance, right? And somewhat information regarding that. So we will continue this lesson in the next session. Till then, keep learning, keep enjoying and take care of your health. Thank you.